The crystalline spires of Queen Lyra Sorrentosa's palace shimmered under the twin suns of Vera Prime, scattering rainbow shards of light across the ceremonial courtyard. Commander Kale Varen adjusted his diplomatic uniform for what felt like the 100th time that morning. 24 years of service in the colonial defense fleet had taught him to stare down hostile gunships without blinking, but standing here, moments away from meeting the alien queen whose decisions could alter the fate of two civilizations, he felt a tightness in his chest he hadn't known in years. "Stop fidgeting, Commander," Ambassador Joran Pell muttered, tugging at the gold-edged sash draped across his own shoulder. "You're making the entire delegation look nervous." "I am nervous," Kale admitted, fingers brushing the pale scar running from his left ear to the corner of his jaw. "Last time humans and Varens sat down for formal talks, 3 colonies declared independence just to avoid choosing sides." "That was different," Joran said, checking his translation device one last time. "This time, there's a chance of success. Besides, Queen Lyra has a reputation for being firm, but fair." Kale nodded absently, eyes fixed on the palace entrance. Massive crystalline doors, grown from living mineral, not constructed, were beginning the ceremonial opening sequence, resonating with a tone like a chorus of glass bells. He had memorized every cultural protocol, practiced the exact depth of the bow, even rehearsed the correct cadence for formal greetings. What he hadn't prepared for was the strange, persistent sense of familiarity that grew stronger with every step toward this meeting. The throne chamber beyond was vast enough to hold a small warship. Bioluminescent patterns danced across the walls in sync with the deep, steady rhythm of the planet's geological heartbeat. At the far end, a dais rose like a mountain of violet crystal, and upon it sat the throne of the Varen Empire. And there she was. Queen Lyra Sorrentos looked nothing like the cold, ceremonial portraits Kale had studied. Her skin was a smooth, luminous shade of violet, her long hair a cascade of platinum white that seemed to glow faintly in the chamber's light. Patterns of royal markings curved across her arms and face, impossibly intricate for human eyes to fully comprehend. Silver-flecked eyes, bright as starlight, regarded the approaching humans with a mix of authority and something else, something almost wistful. "The Human Colonial Alliance delegation is recognized," a court herald announced, his voice carrying strange harmonic overtones that resonated in Kale's chest. Ambassador Joran Pell, Commander Kale Varen, Dr. Lien Mora, and Colonel Mira Holden, the herald continued, "You stand before Her Majesty, Queen Lyra Sorrentos, Keeper of the Crystal Flame, Guardian of the 9 Moons." The delegation advanced with the precision they had practiced for weeks. Kale kept his gaze fixed on the proper middle distance, careful not to meet the Queen's eyes too soon. "Your Majesty," Joran began, bowing with flawless form. "We bring the hopes of the Human Colonial Alliance for lasting peace between our peoples." "The Varen Empire shares that hope," Lyra replied, her voice flowing with the melodic accent of her people. "Too long have our species lived divided by mistrust." The formal exchange continued, each line a carefully scripted piece of diplomatic theater. Kale almost relaxed, until Lyra's gaze shifted, locking onto him. "Commander Kale Varen," she said, and suddenly the chamber felt smaller. "You serve as the Alliance's military representative?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Kale replied, meeting her eyes as protocol demanded. "It is my honor to represent our defense forces in matters of mutual SEC." He stopped. Her silver-flecked eyes had widened, and the bioluminescent walls pulsed faster, as though echoing a sudden spike in her heartbeat. "Commander," she said softly, the formality in her tone wavering. "Would you step forward, please?" Joran shot him a confused glance but gave a small nod. Kale approached the throne, noting the way her hands trembled as she gripped the armrests. Lyra rose, descending the steps with fluid grace, her platinum hair catching every flicker of light. The court whispered at this breach of protocol. She stopped before him, close enough for him to catch the faint scent of ozone and alien flowers clinging to her robes. Her gaze traced the line of his scar with unnerving intensity. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she raised a hand. "May I?" she whispered, too softly for anyone else to hear. Cale nodded, though he didn't know what he was agreeing to. Her cool fingers brushed against his skin, following the scar's path as if retracing a memory burned deep into her. "So it was you," she breathed, voice cracking. "After all these years." The chamber fell silent. Cale stared into those starlit eyes, his mind reeling. "Lieutenant Cale Varen," she said suddenly, her tone shifting to something younger, more vulnerable. "Orion Station. Diplomatic Protection Detail." The name slammed into him like a shockwave. Memories burst to the surface, alarms blaring, corridors aflame, a young Varen princess with blood on her ceremonial robes, and himself, barely more than a cadet, dragging her toward safety while the station tore itself apart. "Princess Lyra," he whispered, the name tasting like a prayer. Her smile trembled, radiant and heartbreaking. "I thought you died trying to save me." "I thought the same about you," Cale said, the weight of decades pressing on his voice. Somewhere behind them, Joran cleared his throat. "Commander Varen, perhaps you could explain what exactly is happening here." Cale glanced at the confused faces around them. "Ambassador. I think our negotiations just got a lot more complicated."
Lyra's expression hardened, though her eyes never left his. "Ambassador Pell, your military representative and I share a history that predates these talks by more than 2 decades, a history that may either save this peace, or destroy it." The private audience chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less magnificent. Veins of amethyst crystal ran through the walls, pulsing faintly in tune with the planet's slow heartbeat. Commander Cale Varen sat across from Queen Lyra Sorrenthos at a table that had grown seamlessly from the floor, its surface a flawless sheet of violet glass. He was still struggling to reconcile the poised monarch before him with the frightened young woman he had once carried through smoke-filled corridors, 25 years earlier. Ambassador Joran Pell, seated to Cale's right, had abandoned all pretenses of disinterest. "Perhaps one of you would like to explain," he said, voice tight with curiosity and suspicion, "what really happened aboard Orion Station." Official records show no survivors. The official records, Lyra said quietly, were written by those who needed the truth buried. She touched a crystal embedded in the table, and a holographic image of Orion Station appeared, once a gleaming symbol of interspecies cooperation, now only a memory. It was supposed to be the first permanent human-Varen cultural exchange facility, Cale said, the old images pulling him back in time. "Diplomats, scientists, artists, the best of both our civilizations, working together. I was there as part of my royal education," Lyra added. 23 years old and arrogant enough to believe I could bridge centuries of mistrust through idealism alone. "And I was fresh out of the academy," Cale continued. "Assigned to the diplomatic protection detail. I thought I'd spend my first deployment learning about peace talks and cultural traditions. Instead," Lyra said softly, "you learned about sabotage and survival." Cale's lips twitched in a grim smile. "And I learned that some things matter more than orders." Dr. Lien Mora leaned forward, her eyes alight with the hunger of an anthropologist sensing history in the making. "And what kind of relationship developed between you during the program?" Cale hesitated, glancing at Lyra. She met his gaze without flinching. "It began as professional respect," Cale said. "But Orion Station was small. The exchange lasted 6 months. We ate together, worked together. Explored each other's cultures," Lyra finished. "And learned that the differences between our species were far fewer than we'd been taught." 6 months of falling in love," Cale said quietly. The chamber's bioluminescent wall patterns brightened, responding to the emotional charge in the air. Joran's expression tightened. "You're saying a human officer had a romantic relationship with a Varen princess during official diplomatic service?" Yes, Lyra said, her voice taking on its regal edge. And it was the most genuine diplomatic breakthrough either species had achieved. Until someone decided to destroy it. Kale pointed to the holographic schematic now glowing with red highlighted damage zones. The explosion that gave me this scar was no accident. Charges were placed with precision, designed to cause maximum casualties and implicate both sides in an apparent act of mutual terrorism. We were in the central hall when it began, Lyra said, her voice tight. It was meant to be a celebration. Instead, it became a slaughter. Kale remembered every detail, power conduits erupting into fire, artificial gravity failing, survivors running in chaos. I tried to get everyone out. The evacuation routes had been sabotaged. Emergency systems were dead. I found Lyra, but most of the station was already gone. He carried me through collapsing corridors and decompression zones, Lyra said, her gaze fixed on him. Half the time we were weightless, the other half we were dodging plasma fires. And you still argued with me the whole way, Kale said, a flicker of humor breaking through. Because you ignored every order I gave to save yourself and abandon me, she replied with a faint smile. Very insubordinate. Dr. Mora's tone softened. How were you separated? Kale's voice went flat. There was only one working escape pod. I forced her into it and launched her toward a Varen patrol ship. And he stayed behind, Lyra said, her silver-flecked eyes glinting. Despite my protests. I had to buy time for other survivors, Kale explained. I reached a shelter seconds before the core went critical. Separate rescues. Separate debriefings. Both governments told us the other was dead. They classified the truth, Lyra said bitterly. It was easier than investigating who was responsible. Colonel Mira Halden spoke for the first time. Then someone was responsible. Oh yes, Lyra said, her voice like a drawn blade. The same kind of people who stand to lose the most from peace. Arms dealers. Extremists. Political opportunists. And if they were behind Orion Station, Kale added, they'll try to destroy these talks the same way. The silence in the chamber was thick with implication. Dr. Mora looked between them. So, what do we do? Kale reached across the table, taking Lyra's hand without hesitation. We do what we should have done 25 years ago. We trust each other. Work together. And refuse to let anyone convince our people that peace is impossible. Lyra's grip tightened. Even if it costs us our careers. Especially if it costs us our careers, Kale said. Then you'll always be my lieutenant, she murmured. And you'll always be my princess, he replied. The chamber's lights pulsed brighter, as though the palace itself approved. But in Kale's mind, a different light flashed. An urgent, red warning that peace would never come without a fight. The ancient archives beneath Queen Lyra Sorrentosa's palace were never intended for clandestine meetings between reunited lovers and suspected conspirators, but at 3 a.m. they served both purposes. Commander Kale Varen moved through narrow corridors lined with towering crystalline data matrices, each humming faintly with centuries of stored knowledge. The instructions Lyra had murmured to him during that afternoon's negotiation session replayed in his mind: take the service stair, count 7 junctions, avoid the West Gallery. He checked his handheld scanner for the 3rd time, confirming no active surveillance. This is either the most romantic secret meeting in galactic history or the most paranoid intelligence briefing ever held, he muttered. Why not both? Lyra's voice drifted from behind a massive data crystal, making him start. She stepped into view wearing simple midnight blue robes instead of her ceremonial regalia. Without the crown and jeweled armor, she looked more like the woman he remembered from Orion Station, her violet skin luminous in the low light, her platinum white hair catching every glimmer from the bioluminescent panels. I've improved my stealth since my lieutenant days, Kale said, joining her at a grown, not built, data interface. Apparently not enough to sneak past me, she teased. But then, I've had 25 years to perfect my palace infiltration skills. She smiled faintly. And, of course, I own the place. They worked side by side, her royal access codes unlocking sealed archives. The displays bathed their faces in shifting shades of blue and green as file after file scrolled past. Lyra highlighted a series of encrypted transmissions from the weeks before Orion Station's destruction. "Look at these message routes," she said. "Human and Varen extremist groups, all funneled through neutral space intermediaries. Same encryption patterns as the ones flagged in the last week." Kale's jaw tightened. "And here, anonymous funding transfers. Matches exactly with the movement of credits we've been tracking during these negotiations." "It's the same network," Lyra said, her voice low but steady. "The same people who destroyed Orion Station are working to sabotage us now. They profit from conflict," Kale said grimly. "Arms dealers. Regional power brokers. Extremists convinced peace is a betrayal of species identity." Before Lyra could respond, the archive's security system emitted a soft chime. Footsteps approached, measured, deliberate. "Hide," Lyra whispered, but Kale was already pulling her behind one of the larger data crystals. They pressed close together, their breathing shallow. "Routine security sweep," came a voice speaking accented human standard. "Her Majesty has spent unusual amounts of time here lately," another replied, this one with the melodic harmonics of Varen speech. "Perhaps researching precedent for the talks. Still, her interest is unusually focused." Kale felt Lyra's warmth against him, and for a moment, time folded back on itself. He remembered slipping into maintenance corridors on Orion Station, stealing a few precious minutes together while the rest of the galaxy spun on, oblivious. "Some things never change," he murmured. "Some things shouldn't," she whispered back. The patrol moved deeper into the archives, voices fading. Still, they remained hidden for another minute, suspended in the fragile space between danger and something far more personal. When they finally returned to the interface, Lyra's fingers moved quickly over the crystalline controls. Another file opened, more evidence of coordinated sabotage. "Some of these names," Kale's expression darkened. "Lyra, this funding trail leads directly to someone in my delegation." Her eyes narrowed. "And one of my Royal Council members. People I've trusted with state secrets." They stared at each other across the glowing console, realization dawning. They could not trust their own inner circles. "So, what now?" Kale asked. "We do what we did then," Lyra said, voice steady. "We trust each other. Even if it means defying our own governments." She reached across the display, taking his hand. "Some things are worth that risk, peace between our peoples, and the chance that this time, we don't lose each other." Kale's communicator vibrated, its alert tone sharp in the quiet. A high-priority message from Colonial Intelligence advised heightened caution around members of the Varen royal family, specifically Queen Lyra. Her own device chimed almost simultaneously. Varen Intelligence urged discretion around the human military representative, specifically Commander Kale Varen. "They're already starting," she said, her voice tight. "Trying to make us doubt each other." Kale deleted his message without reading it again. "Not this time." "This time," Lyra agreed, "we fight back." They left separately, taking different routes to their quarters. But as Kale slipped into the shadowed corridor, Lyra's parting words echoed in his mind. "Remember Orion Station. Remember who we were before the universe caught fire." He remembered. And he had no intention of letting history repeat itself. The emergency session of the Joint Negotiation Committee convened at dawn. The crystalline conference hall seemed colder than usual, its walls reflecting pale light from the overcast skies above Vera Prime. Every delegate wore some variation of confusion, anger, or outright hostility. Commander Kale Varen sat across the long table from Queen Lyra Sorrenthos, both maintaining perfect diplomatic composure despite the storm that had erupted hours earlier. Ambassador Joran Pell's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Would someone care to explain, he began, how classified recordings of private conversations between our military representative and Her Majesty have appeared on every major news channel in human space. The recordings, carefully edited, implied clandestine meetings, breaches of protocol, and, most damning of all, an illicit romance meant to manipulate the negotiations. The recordings are real, Lyra said evenly. Commander Varen and I have met privately, outside the formal schedule. Your Majesty, one of her own cultural advisors began nervously, please consider what you're admitting. I have considered, she interrupted. And I will not let these talks be destroyed by the same conspiracy that murdered 300 innocents aboard Orion Station 25 years ago. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Kale rose, activating the holographic display built into the table. We've uncovered identical patterns, financial transfers, encrypted communications, and misinformation campaigns, that match those from before the station's destruction. The same network is working now, to ensure peace fails before it can begin. Images flashed in the air above them. Intercepted transmissions between human and Varen extremists, routed through neutral space relays, bank records linking known armed syndicates to political figures, timelines aligning past and present acts of sabotage. For decades, Lyra said, her voice resonating with regal authority, these people have profited from fear. They destroyed Orion Station to kill the hope we represented. And now they are trying to destroy these talks for the same reason. Colonel Mira Halden frowned. And your secret meetings? Were the only way to investigate without alerting the traitors inside our own delegations, Kale finished. The room erupted in overlapping protests and accusations. Joran's voice cut through the noise. You're accusing members of the diplomatic corps of treason. I'm stating facts, Kale said, his voice low but carrying. Payments from extremist accounts to 3 individuals in positions of authority over these negotiations. Communications routed through encrypted relays known to serve both human and Varen radicals. Lyra added another set of files to the display. Including, regrettably, members of my royal council. The silence that followed was brittle. And your relationship? Asked Dr. Lien Mora, her academic curiosity unquenched even now. Kale and Lyra exchanged a look heavy with decades of memory. It began at Orion Station, Kale said. It survived its destruction. It endured 25 years of enforced separation. And it has been renewed here, during these talks. It is not a liability, Lyra said firmly. It is proof that peace is possible. Before the room could absorb that, the chamber's security alert blared. Captain Rin Nalos appeared at Lyra's side. Your Majesty, he said urgently, extremist fleets inbound. Both human and Varen vessels. Coordinated trajectory toward the palace. How long? Kale asked, his voice all business now. 4 hours until orbital bombardment range. Less if they bypass the defense grid. Colonel Halden's mouth tightened. If they have our classified protocols, interception will fail. Lyra looked around the table. We can evacuate and abandon the treaty, letting them win, or we can stay, sign the accord, and prove their violence means nothing. Stay, Kale said without hesitation. Some victories are worth dying for. The vote was closer than Lyra liked, but still in favor. They would sign the treaty. As the delegates filed out to make preparations, Lyra took Kale's hand deliberately, in full view of the chamber. No more hiding, she said. No more pretending this is anything less than what it is. This time, Kale replied, we finish what we started. 4 hours later, as warships closed in, the Treaty of Vera Prime was signed in a ceremony broadcast live across both human and Varen space. The extremist fleet, expecting a divided defense, met a wall of unified firepower. Human and Varen crews fought side by side, their coordination flawless. The battle was short and decisive. The conspiracy that had thrived on distrust for a quarter century was broken in the space of an hour. In the crystalline throne room where their reunion had begun, Lyra reached up to touch Kale's scar, not with the haunted recognition of the past, but with gratitude for the future. "So it was you," she whispered again. "We saved them together," Kale said, pressing a kiss to her hand. Outside, ships from two civilizations patrolled the same skies for the first time in history, already charting joint missions to worlds neither could reach alone. The peace they had forged would face challenges, but it had been tempered in fire, and both knew it would endure. Some love stories were simply too important to be destroyed. And so, against all odds, the historic Treaty of Vera Prime was not just a political document. It was a promise written in courage, sacrifice, and the unshakable bond between two people who refused to let fear decide the fate of their worlds. Commander Kale Varen and Queen Lyra Sorrenthos had been separated by sabotage, silenced by politics, and targeted by extremists. Yet, through every attempt to twist the truth, they had held on to the one thing the conspirators could never touch: trust. The peace they forged that day was more than an agreement between governments, it was a symbol to every human and every Varen that old wounds could heal, and that unity was not a dream, but a choice. Even the extremists, in their final act of violence, had unwittingly proven the point: when the skies darkened, both species stood together, and they prevailed. The galaxy would remember the image of Lyra's violet hand in Kale's human one, the ink of their signatures still drying as enemy fleets burned in the upper atmosphere. It would not be an easy road ahead. Treaties could be challenged. Borders could shift. Mistrust could try to creep back in. But the precedent had been